There's some debate amongst people as to whether or not this counts as an official special. On the one hand, it was released in 2001, 14 years after the studio's closure. On the other hand, it was produced by Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr., the original founders of the studio, though with a much different animation style and tone and setting compared to their output in the 70s and 80s. This might be in part because, whereas a majority of the original specials were all written by one guy, Romeo Muller, Santa Baby, based on the song of the same name, kinda but not really, was co-written by Peter Bacalane and Suzanne Collins. Wait, Suzanne Collins, that sounds familiar. Give me a second. Oh, well, how do you like that? Suzanne Collins would go on to write the New York Times best-selling series The Hunger Games. If that isn't a writing glow-up, I don't know what is. And I call it a glow-up because this special is really bad. The story is narrated by a Christmas Partridge, who tells the story of Hep Street, and how a few years ago, there wasn't much Christmas spirit here until she gave a wish to a young girl living there, because that's apparently something she can do, who used it to try and help to inspire her songwriter father, who ends up writing the endearing Christmas classic of the same name. So that's the only reason this special is called Santa Baby. Oh, and there's also an evil landlord who owns an apartment building who tries to kill a bunch of animals, and the girl and her father go and help Santa Claus save Christmas after he breaks his leg. This special is sort of weird. The plot meanders all over the place and presents us with several different stories that don't really intertwine or resolve in any satisfying way that brings everything together. And with so many different characters and different plot lines, no one really gets any sort of development or deeper motivation, which is a shame because if the special had cut back a bit and actually focused on maybe one of its disparate plot lines and fleshed it out, it might have been a bit better. Though that wouldn't change the fact that what is ostensibly the main plotline of the story involves a lot of magic and wishes and Santa Claus, which kind of breaks the whole grounded, more realistic world setting that they were trying to use. I was actually kind of intrigued at first to know the special used an urban setting, considering that all of the other specials took place primarily in the distant past or in more rural town settings, but they don't really do much with it. Now obviously the animation is going to be much better if you compare a product from 2001 to ones that were released in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but for the time it was released, I don't know, the special still has a slightly cheap tinge to its animation and movement, though I do think that the cartoonish designs of the characters work in its favor, but the setting itself feels bland to me. Like, I can look back at the sets and settings of any of the other specials, be it stop motion or traditional animation, and while they weren't always amazing, a majority of them were impressive or lush or fun to look at. The cityscape we have here, while an interesting change-up, is very boring by comparison, I think. At least the cast is solid. I don't have any real complaints about the voice acting. It's solid all around, and they did get a lot of big names for the special. Primarily among them, Eartha Kitt, who sung the original version of Santa Baby. And it's actually very refreshing to see a television special that features a nearly all-black cast playing black characters. That's actually rarer than you might think, and it's especially notable when you go back to all the other specials and realize that they were overall very white. So kudos where it's due. The voice acting itself is solid. While the material they're working with is not very good, you can tell that the cast was actually trying their best to sell it, even if the end product wasn't really made all that better by their efforts, unfortunately. The rest of the sound design is not as bright though. To give you an idea of how bad it is, this is the only Rankin-Bass special to ever use Hanna-Barbera stock sound effects. Those tend to stick out a bit. The background music is actually very pretty throughout though, and the bar's set high when you get a very relaxing saxophone solo to start us off. But then the songs come in. Most of them are well-known Christmas classics, covered in rap and hip-hop styles. Look, Christmas music by its nature is already very difficult to modernize without sounding ridiculous, but rap and hip-hop are probably the most difficult genres you could have chosen to try with. The special also features a truly terrible club mix of Santa Baby as well. Actually, let's talk real quick about the song because I can't get over this. This is, for all of its faults, a sincere attempt at a Christmas special. It does its best to try and instill that warm, cheesy feeling you get when you're watching other Rankin-Bass specials. I think it fails pretty hard at that, but that's neither here nor there. But the song that it takes its namesake from is going hard and fast in the opposite direction. If you've never heard Santa Baby before, particularly the Eartha Kitt version, I'd recommend giving it a listen. It's a good song, but one of the reasons it's so good is because of how at odds it is with the typical Christmas music message. It is a cynical, comedic, almost parody-level tune about how greed-filled and commercialized Christmas is, essentially being a song sung from the perspective of an incredibly vain woman singing her Christmas list at Santa in the most pleading and teasing way she can manage in order to get him to bring her a ton of extravagant, expensive gifts. Diamonds, a yacht, a Sable, which was an expensive car at the time. It could not be further from the tone of message that the special itself is trying to present. But then that's the feeling I get when I look at this thing as a whole. I won't say that they didn't care while making it. I can see the effort shining through, or at least what I perceive to be effort. But it just feels like a project that no one had a solid roadmap for, or didn't really think too hard about how everything was going to connect in the end product. I'm sorry to say, but the last special that Rankin-Bass ever worked on was definitely one of their weakest. But cheer up, because we still have a few more things to take a look at this month. And from here on out, we're going to be looking at where some of the other characters ended up after the original studio closed its doors.